I just want to mention that the underwriter for today's episode is Anchor Podcast Platform. These are the free podcast people that will help you or anybody who wants to start a podcast. They'll get you going and they'll put you on all the platforms from Spotify to Apple and Google, Stitcher, and they do it for free. They don't charge you a dime. I mean, this is all about the democratization of audio so that everybody can have a voice online like this. And they've supported me in getting my podcast started. And for that, I'm grateful. This is Rumble. This is Michael Moore. And we're coming up here with him. We're just a couple days from the Michigan primary, the Washington State primary, North Dakota, Idaho, Mississippi, right? And unfortunately, there's no one-on-one debate between Biden and Sanders before this Tuesday's primary. So we don't get to see what we really need to see. So today, I thought I would have one of our longtime friends and fighters with us here. You have seen her on television for many years. She was the host of a show on MSNBC for some time period, and now she is the co-anchor of the morning news show on The Hill, on thehill.com. And her name, as you now are probably already know, is Krystal Ball. And Krystal, thank you so much for being here on my podcast today.
It is truly my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
It's let's just get right into it, because for the last week, I mean, people have been filled with despair.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say people, I mean, I'm trying to think of, I mean, just about everybody. Elizabeth Warren people are filled with despair. People were for Mayor Pete. I know some very excited people, despair. People who care about the country, people who are worried that Trump's going to get another 4 years. But there was a shift that took place last weekend, South Carolina.
Yep.
Came out very strong for Joe Biden. And then that helped him sweep the South on Super Tuesday. And weirdly enough, Massachusetts and Minnesota.
And Maine.
And half of Maine, I think. How they go up
very
there.
Close,
yeah.
yes.
It's they get to split by their 2 congressional districts of the Electoral College. But all those southern states, these are all states that Trump is going to win. And these are states that none of the Democratic candidates will ever visit again. I don't know if they know that or not. I mean, I think they had a big hand in shifting this over to helping Joe Biden. But as I said on my podcast a couple of days ago, when they finally announced the California results, even though the AP has already called it for Bernie, the number of delegates there is going to Biden and Bernie, as we go into Tuesday, are going to be neck and neck.
Right.
So my big concern, and I've said this before, I mean, I've known Joe Biden I don't know him personally, but I've been with him and met him on a number of occasions. Very nice guy, very nice to me, very big fan of my movies and all that. But
I think he needs to watch him again, maybe. Maybe you should watch Sicko again.
Well, when he ran in 2008, one of the many times that he's run for president, he said he's on camera saying that he supports a single-payer system. But he's all over the map throughout his whole career. It's
right.
Really hard to get a handle on him. He's for women's rights, but he votes with the anti-abortion people on the Hyde Amendment and making it so that poor women could not get abortions through Medicaid in the states. And it's he's just I'm so concerned mainly because our let's be honest, our main concern is that Trump doesn't get another 4 years. That's job one. And I know I've been asking my listeners to also add a second job, which is let's not just get rid of Trump, but let's get rid of the system that gave us Trump. Let's get rid of that, whether it's the economic system we have that allows for a few rich people and everybody else
right.
is there for to fight for what's left. And in a political system, this is such a whacked way that we pick our president and all the money that's in politics, et cetera, et cetera. It's just all messed up. We need to change this. But this thing could get decided in the next week or two.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The week after Michigan is Florida, Illinois, Ohio. I mean, this is, here we are.
And that's the thing, because if you look at the delegate math, you're absolutely right. Once California's all in, they'll be pretty close in delegate counts. It'll be more or less a tie in terms of delegate counts. But now that you just have two people in the race, the math is such that, number one, you can't get blown out anywhere and hope to come back, especially in a big state like Florida, where, let's be honest, Florida, the demographics are very challenging for Bernie Sanders. Some of the most challenging in the nation because it's an older state. Older people have tended to be more skeptical of Bernie Sanders' message. And because the type of Latino population that is there, more conservative, it hasn't been a strong suit for Bernie Sanders either. So that is looming. Now, to your point, the good news is, before we get to Florida, Bernie and Joe are going to have that one-on-one, head-to-head debate where Joe cannot hide.
Right, but that's next Sunday.
That's next Sunday.
That's
First, we got Michigan.
Yeah, so people aren't going to... Joe Biden has never had to stand on a stage for 2 hours and talk with, one person.
Not recently.
No, not for quite some time. And, people have been listening to me. They hear me dancing around this thing because I'm trying to be kind. Because when people get to a certain age, or when people, if they have a certain, physical drawback or whatever, I don't like focusing on those things. I don't think it's fair and all this. But at the same time, Trump is going to crush him. And people are going to regret that they jumped so early here. It's not really early. He's been running for a year, but he's kept off TV. Even Rachel the other night is like begging him to come on because he will not appear. Even on MSNBC, who had been pushing him this whole time, he won't go on Rachel. Maybe that'll change this week, but there's a reason he won't go on Rachel or every other show. Just look at when he was on the Sunday shows last weekend. That was stunning because I thought, oh my God, here we go. And then of course, he doesn't know who he's talking to. He calls Chris Wallace Chuck. He the week before that, he said that he was running for the Senate, not the presidency.
Right. Couldn't remember the word God, has had trouble remembering President Obama's name, gets his wife and his sister mixed up. To your point, it's uncomfortable to talk about.
I know,
but the stakes are so high. And now we're putting all our eggs in this basket.
Without a debate.
Right.
Michigan and the state of Washington and the others, you're voting without seeing what his mental faculties are. I think you've kind of already seen. We've all seen it.
Right.
We all have had our loving grandparents get to an age, or if you're younger, maybe it's your great grandparent, maybe it's your parents, maybe. And I want elderly people to have all the rights and the abilities and privileges. And, the last thing they want to do is give up their driver's license. And I'm in favor of them keeping that driver's license as long as they can, because you're a prisoner in your house once you can't move around.
Right.
So I hesitate on all this. But, what do you say to people with this? Because I don't want to use it as a political point, because people will come back at me and say, well, Bernie Sanders had a heart attack. And I go, yeah, and he's asked about it in practically every debate.
Right.
But Joe Biden is not asked about what is obvious and evident to everybody watching at home.
Right.
And they're probably afraid to ask for the same reasons I don't want to ask. Not that I'm afraid. I'm trying to be a good person.
Right. Right. And look, I think it would be hard for the campaign to raise it directly because of that. So I think it is incumbent on people like us, or people, whether they're, with Bernie or not, to raise this concern as an issue, because the stakes are so high, not only to get Trump out of office, but I agree with you. That's just the beginning. The real concern for me, even beyond Trump, is what happens if you don't address those underlying factors that brought us Donald Trump in the first place. I think people have a lack of imagination to think that it couldn't be worse than Trump. It could absolutely be worse than Trump. I see some of them, coming up in the Senate right now, or coming up in states around the country right now.
They were all auditioning during the impeachment hearings. You saw them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Batshit crazy.
Matt Gaetz wearing his, mask, making light of coronavirus on the floor, and then a resident in his own district does. These people are, but they're ideological, and some of them are competent. Our biggest lucky break with Trump is his sheer complete incompetence. So it could be so much worse than Trump if we don't deal with those underlying factors. I have zero confidence that Joe Biden could defeat Donald Trump, and I have even less confidence that he could change those underlying structural factors. I mean, first of all, I think one thing that the campaign needs to press relentlessly is that Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton 2.0. Same type of candidate.
Right.
He's just as electable as Hillary and Al Gore and John Kerry, right? How did that work out for us?
Right.
And on the one hand, look, you're right. Joe is a more sort of natural politician than Hillary. People do like him. He has this humanity from the grief that he suffered and the life that he's lived. On the other hand, Hillary had much more on the ball, was much more capable at that point, and Trump was much weaker. He is a much stronger candidate this time. So even if you say, oh, Joe is marginally better than Hillary because people just have more of a natural affinity to him, that may be true. But we have to do much better than that because Trump is still able to run as an outsider, but has the full power of the federal government and a real campaign and a real apparatus and the entire of the Republican Party behind him. I mean, remember, last time around, when the Access Hollywood tape came out, Mike Pence thought about dropping out for the ticket. There was a lot of discomfort in the Republican Party with Donald Trump at that point. That doesn't exist anymore. They're all in for him now. That has completely consolidated and happened. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is just how much more formidable he is going to be. So yes, in terms of Biden and talking about what is a very uncomfortable issue, I think it's incumbent on journalists. I think it's incumbent on, all of us lovely toxic Bernie bros out there to be raising what is a legitimate substantive issue about the future of our nation and just how much we are reliant on a man who is clearly not at his peak, let's just say.
People listening to this, some of them right now are going, Mike, Krystal, don't we got to have unity here. Don't be saying these things because Trump's going to use it in the general election if Biden is the candidate. And I'm like, okay, listen, Trump's already got the whole script written on how he's going to go after Joe Biden.
Absolutely, and it's much nastier than anything any of us would ever say.
Yeah,
because
we're not nasty about it. I mean, I will say I love Joe Biden as a human being, and I think he's done some incredible things and all that. But, oh my God, please, I want to get on the tallest building or the mountain or whatever and scream out, people, you're setting this up again. You're setting this up again for a loss to Donald Trump. And everything you just said is true. He's much stronger. His base, he hasn't lost a single one of them. He's probably gained. He's better at it. I used to say he's like the best performance artist I've ever seen, but he's even better at that.
Yep.
I mean, really, I'm surprised a network hasn't already signed him just to do the show from once a week from the White House or something, because it's clear that's what he likes. He likes the audience. He goes out and he has his rallies, and he's going to be going up against somebody who voted for NAFTA, which, if you don't know what that means, I'll tell you, if you're from Michigan or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, this cost us tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs,
for sure,
of jobs. This trade deal that Bill Clinton gave us and that Joe Biden pushed in the Senate and voted for.
And still supports, by the way.
And still supports it, yes. So there are so many other reasons to be deeply concerned about this. But I also want to talk about the positive things that people should be thinking about here with Bernie. And I mean, what do you think if you were running Bernie's campaign this week?
Yeah.
What would you be saying and doing? What would you be suggesting to him to do? What is it that maybe you and I have seen up close with Sanders that the public hasn't seen? That if they truly knew him, because I know Larry David plays the caricature of him on Saturday Night Live, and he's the the grumpy old man, shouting. He's got his napkin tucked in because he's soup drooling and all this. But the truth is, I challenged Bernie to a foot race a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, not that I'm the one you'd want to put your money on, but I'm just saying we didn't go through with it because he felt bad for me because I was going to lose in such an awful way. But
just shows his kindness.
No, he's so kind and he's so funny and he's so humble. It's very hard to get him to talk about himself.
It is.
Because he doesn't want to do that typical politician thing and tooting the horn and all that. And
well, can I tell you?
Yeah, go.
I actually don't. I think in the media, they don't like Hillary says nobody likes him, right? In, elite Washington, in elite media, New York Times is out with another stupid red baiting story. Like, they don't like him or understand his appeal. I actually don't think that's the problem for him at all among the electorate. I mean, you look at the numbers, people like him. He's routinely rated most favorable among the Democratic candidates. They trust him. They like him best on the issues. Healthcare and climate are the number one, number two issues for Democratic voters. They prefer Bernie Sanders. They trust him more on the issues. The problem is that for so many people, first of all, they've been propagandized to believe that Donald Trump is the end-all be-all of all of the problems in this. And if we can just get rid of Donald Trump, that is the only thing we should care about. And so whether it's Michael Bloomberg or Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, whoever you tell us is the person to beat Donald Trump, that is who we're going to be with, which is why you saw so much instant consolidation around Joe Biden, because everybody laid their hands on and said, we got it, this is the guy. So you have to acknowledge that's the reality, right? The electability concerns for everybody over the age of 30 to 40 is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issue.
That's
so
right.
That's reality, right? And we can wish it was otherwise. It's not otherwise. That's reality. So we have to learn from that. The Bernie team had a theory of the case coming in, and it's a beautiful theory of the case, that you could gin up youth turnout enough and bring in more working class people enough to overcome the more resistant parts of the Democratic electorate to him. So the suburban voters who are kind of uncomfortable with him, or the older voters who are uncomfortable with him. It hasn't panned out, right? That theory of the case, for I think a variety of reasons, including justified cynicism from a generation that has been screwed over by this system so many times they have trouble believing that anyone is going to make it better.
Right.
That is reality. However, on a hopeful note, those elements of the party that we thought would be so resistant to Bernie Sanders, they're actually not. They're actually open to him because they would vote for anyone, even if they don't necessarily care about Medicare for All, Green New Deal, or whatever. They will vote for anyone who can beat Donald Trump. So here's the thing, and this is where I think Bernie is so nice. He doesn't necessarily want to play hardball in this way, but the reality is, putting aside Joe Biden's memory lapses and those issues, putting aside the trade issues, putting aside his environmental issues, women, all of that stuff, putting all of that aside, there is a major issue on electability for Joe Biden, which is that young people are not going to show up to vote for him. They are with Bernie Sanders, not because of Bernie, but because they are voting on Medicare for All and a Green New Deal. It actually would probably be 1 Green New Deal, 2 Medicare for All. These are the people who are the infrequent voters, and they are not going to turn out for you, Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment, and you can't take them for granted. Bernie and his team need to make it clear that this base that you're relying on, that you're just assuming, that you're in fact sticking your middle finger in the face of right now and saying, no, it's not your turn. We are all going to do whatever we can to stop the candidate that you have lined up behind. They're not going to show up. So yeah, Biden has all the normal voters who always turn out. They're going to show up for whoever. But the infrequent voters, the people that you actually need to be energized, enthused to come out and vote, those people are not going to be there for Joe Biden. Now, that's kind of playing hardball, because honestly, it's kind of like a nice party you got there. Shame if something happens to it. Kind of a case, right?
Yeah. And that's not a threat from me. I mean, I'll tell them they need to vote. They need to vote on November 3rd.
Sure.
I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for whoever
but people have free will.
is on the ballot. You're voting for the Democrat. That's it. We've got to remove Trump. You can't say this is an existential threat and then you don't exist on November 3rd.
Right.
You don't show up. But
people have free will, and you have to earn their vote.
Believe me, no matter how many times I'll say, hey, everybody vote, that isn't going to guarantee. I'm telling you right now, I've been across the country with Bernie. I've been at the rallies. I've seen him with especially younger people and with Latino and Latinas. People are not going to show up. I don't know what to say about that, other than I'll ask them and encourage them to show up. But I think what you're bringing up is something nobody wants to talk about, but it needs to be talked about now. I'm not saying that's a reason you should vote for Bernie. I'm just saying that the Biden people and the DNC should not count on just an automatic, oh, okay, here's what's going to happen. No, that's not what's going to happen. And I saw it in Flint, in Detroit. I saw it in Philly and Milwaukee.
Right.
The 3 states that Trump won by. It wasn't because Lunch Bucket Joe went and voted for Trump in these states. Trump only won Michigan by 2 votes per precinct. That's it.
Right.
So he won because the African American community was so insulted on so many levels by the Clinton campaign, by the history of Bill Clinton. The way the media has tried to always portray Clinton and Hillary as being beloved by Black Americans. It's just not the case. And so in Flint, I know this statistic very well, there were approximately 8,000 African Americans who chose not to vote that day. There were between 80 and 90,000 Michigan voters who actually went to vote, voted for every office on the ballot, and left the top box blank.
Yep.
Because they would not vote for Hillary.
Yep.
Or Trump. And wow, that's a lot of people to show up. Nobody organized that. There was no movement to, hey, let's all go vote, but not vote for, let's leave the box blank for Hillary. It just happened because people were so angry, and they realize that the Clintons and the Democrats haven't done jack for them, basically. And so once people get to that point where they check out,
right.
They came back in the off-year election in Michigan because we had ballot proposals to outlaw gerrymandering, to legalize marijuana. You let people make law, they'll come and vote.
Right.
But try to encourage them to come out and vote for. And I feel like I'm in a deja vu experience here, because Hillary had the same thing where she wins South Carolina in 16, wins all the southern states. The analysis is yes, because they're heavily black voters are in these states, and thus and African Americans love the Clintons, and therefore that's what happened. But I hear this from people in Michigan, in Detroit and Flint. Black Americans hate being homogenized into one pot, and they're all the same.
Right.
The South Carolina voter is the same as the South Side Chicago voter.
Or the California voter, or the Texas
California voter is the same as the Newark voter. It's not true.
Right.
And if you're black and you have to listen to the media constantly, make you into just a monolith where you're all the same vote, it's insulting, it's pandering, and then after the day after the election in 16, they're all shocked that, wow, look at the turnout in Philly and Detroit, and
Yep.
people stayed home, or they came and voted, but they wouldn't vote for the president.
Well, and I don't know if you remember, the New York Times interviewed some of the black men who stayed home in Milwaukee, and were like, now that you see the reality of Trump, do you wish you would have voted? And we're like, nope. Because they still saw that Hillary wasn't going to do anything for their lives.
After 3 years of Trump, that's a hardcore commitment.
Yeah.
Now, people may not like hearing that, or they may get up on their high horse and go, well, they should vote. They should vote for the Democrat. Well, thank you, white people, for your...
Yeah, thank you for your input.
Your wagging finger.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is no one owes you their vote. You have to earn it, right? You have to earn it. No one in this country owes Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or anyone else their vote. You have to earn it. And with Joe Biden, you've got a guy who, comes to New York and sits in rooms with wealthy donors and tells them that nothing will fundamentally change if I'm president. That's what we're talking about. Who's going to get off,
Right. No, I know. Listen, this is driving me crazy because of what I think is going to happen if Biden is the candidate, that we're going to have a repeat of what happened to Hillary. And we're going to have 4 more years of Trump, and that means Trump gets at least 2 more Supreme Court seats.
Yeah.
He will have stacked the court with at least 4, maybe 5, by the time he's done. This is insanity. That's why all of us have to be committed to stopping Trump by any means necessary, even if that means voting for Joe Biden. So there's no question about that, stopping Trump. But I'm afraid that we're going to lose our best chance to do that if Bernie isn't on the ballot. But people are listening to this, Krystal, and they're saying, Mike, Krystal, I don't actually think Bernie is the best. I don't think people aren't going to vote for, Trump's still going to call him a communist the whole time, and people are going to he'll say it enough, it'll become the truth, and that'll be the end of that. And listening to this right now, they don't actually think Bernie is the best way to get at Biden. I think there's probably a lot of people going, maybe neither of them are, but it's too late now. So that's our choice. If that's our choice, what can I say to people? What can you say to people to tell them, that they in Michigan, at least on Tuesday, they need to give some real consideration here to Bernie Sanders, because that's our way to crush Trump.
Yeah, I think there's depending on the person, I think there's a pretty compelling case. Number one, we tried the centrist model last time and we lost. We were told all of this last time around that Hillary Clinton was the electable person and we all had to suck it up and get behind her in the primary if we wanted to win. We were told she was electable because she was a centrist. That was clearly wrong. So let's start there. Number two, you need the young people. There's no energy or enthusiasm behind the Biden campaign. There's not. The people that you most need to turn out and vote are thrilled, excited, through the roof, organizing, volunteering, donating for Bernie Sanders because of his stances on the issues. And they're not going to turn out for just anyone. Number three, trade. I mean, what did Hillary get beat over the head with? Justifiably so, throughout the industrial Midwest. Trade. Biden is arguably worse on the issue than she is. Stood by, helped pass NAFTA, still stands by NAFTA, was integral in the TPP trade deal that Hillary at least walked away from and seemed very disingenuous. People didn't really buy it. Joe still stands by that. He helped open up trade relations with China, which also had a devastating impact on that region. Trump will hammer that home every single day. And here's the other thing, another uncomfortable thing that Democrats don't want to talk about. But the reality is that, yes, while it was far worse what Donald Trump was doing in Ukraine, it's not a great look for your son to be sitting on a Ukrainian energy board making $50,000 a year.
Oh, you said it.
And while Democrats don't want to say that,
they don't want to say that.
Donald Trump is going to say that, and trust me, so much more. He's already saying it.
Yeah, and people listening to this right now, people are going to vote for whoever the Democrat is, are like, oh God, don't bring this up, please, because everybody knows it's wrong. Deep down, we wanted to get the impeachment through, so we were all willing to turn our heads away from this. And it's not about whether Hunter Biden broke the law or whatever. I don't think he broke the law.
No, I don't think he broke the law.
That's not the point.
The point is actually that it is so common.
Yes, that's the point.
Is that everybody does it. That's the problem.
And that's for whatever reason, Hunter becomes the poster boy of why the system is corrupt.
That's right.
The system benefits, in this case, both not only he getting that position on that Ukrainian board that he had no history or qualifications or anything for it to do, but that dad also takes him on Air Force Two to China.
Right, and gets
another deal.
Yep.
For Hunter.
Sits on the Amtrak board because he, quote, rides the trains. That was the justification for why Hunter was on the board, was a lobbyist for MBNA, the big credit card issuer from Delaware that Joe Biden used to be called the senator from MBNA because he was so cozy with. I mean, look, and that's that's the stuff that I actually think is even legitimate to talk about. Then there's all the things that I'm not even going to say that I believe are illegitimate to use against Joe Biden, but Hunter's had his struggles. And you think Donald Trump isn't going to bring that stuff up? I've got another thing coming for you.
Yeah, no, and in some ways, then I feel sorry for Hunter because it's his private life is his private life, but
of course
Trump doesn't care about that.
Of course not.
Trump is a vicious, evil person, and I don't think nobody should run away from Trump because he's going to attack me or he's going to attack him or her. No, you gotta face him square on. But damn. I just feel like now I'm that cartoon character that's trying to hold back the wall, the avalanche, the finger in the dam, so that the water doesn't burst through.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else to do at this point to try. And I just feel like I'm so tired of this too. Through all my years of my films and everything, of trying to warn people, here's what's coming around the corner, folks. And I don't ever seem to succeed in people believing that this shit's going to hit the fan here.
Yeah.
And if we don't act, if we don't wake up, if we don't rise up. And so I'm in my own despair about that, because I don't know what to say now at this point, other than I'm counting on the people I know. I mean, Bernie won Michigan 4 years ago. Right.
And he was down in the polls coming in.
Well, that morning, the CBS station in Detroit said that Hillary was going to win that day. This is the day of the election, the primary election in Michigan in 2016. That Hillary was going to win by like 21 points. And then that night she lost by a point or two to Bernie. Even he believed it. He left the state. He'd gone to Florida.
He thought it was over.
Well, there's that famous, I think it was CNN or whatever. They actually woke him up at his motel or hotel in Florida, and he comes out. He's not quite in his pajamas, but he certainly looks like, he had gone down for the night. So he comes out, and they tell him that he's won. Good. It's like,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So
well, and let's be clear too. Like Michigan. So the two in terms of delegates, the two biggest states that are coming up on Tuesday are Michigan and Washington. Those are two states that could be good for Bernie Sanders. North Dakota and Idaho are smaller delegate wise. Those are also places where he could do well. He's done very well, sort of west of the Mississippi at this point. Mississippi, obviously, I don't think is going to go our way, and hopefully we can hold down the margin as much as possible. But to be hopeful, let's be hopeful here, delegate count more or less even, okay? You've got a one-on-one race between a guy who clearly knows where he stands, everyone knows where he stands, is fighting for the people, is fighting for healthcare for all, is fighting for a livable planet through the Green New Deal, $15 minimum wage, restoring unions, all those things that people know about Bernie Sanders and like him and trust him, versus a guy who's had trouble articulating himself at all, let alone a vision for the country. Like that's a favorable matchup for us, especially even on electability, even with the people who just say, I want the electable guy. Now, we have to survive this week, because then we get a debate, right? Then we get to see that head-to-head comparison. And I think, looking at the polling, that there's a good chance that we come out of this week still in the ball game, right? And then you keep going and you keep going. Look, I've been advocating for something else that I think, is also a little controversial, and I have no idea whether the team is open to this, whether Elizabeth Warren is open to this, whatever, but I really do believe, and I've been critical of Elizabeth Warren, more critical of her than you've been, but I really believe the time is now to unify her supporters with the Sanders movement and actually not just seek her endorsement, but actually put her on the ticket as the VP choice.
Yeah.
Because, look, the reality is, again, the youth turnout isn't what it needs to be. It's just not, we can't rely on that. So you have to look for another coalition to build. And Elizabeth Warren is someone that the suburban voter really liked, was very comfortable with, right? She had a real pull there. Her coalition was very different than Bernie's coalition ultimately. So she could create a comfort level there. And she could also do something that, unfortunately, we've seen how unbelievably freaking powerful cable news is, which is like the most despairing thing I can think of. But you put Elizabeth Warren on the ticket, and that creates a news cycle for you. The same kind of news cycle that Joe Biden had when all the centrists jumped in behind him. You can get your own news cycle where there's maybe enough of a shift to start to turn the tides. Look, I don't think if you weren't in a sort of back against the wall situation, she's not who I would pick for VP. I think she has some electoral liabilities for the fall, although I think she would be a very good vice president. I think she's a very capable person. I also happen to think she's great, on the attack. I think she could go after Joe Biden in a much more aggressive way than Bernie Sanders.
She destroyed Bloomberg.
Ever would or could.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to have on the ticket too. But, I think that Bernie needs some friends. He needs some validators right now. He needs some sort of normie validators who can make suburban voters take another look and say, this is the guy that I can be comfortable with and who will defeat Trump. Warren could potentially serve in that role.
How about Dick Van Dyke?
That's a good one, too.
As soon
I
as
like
you
that
said
one,
Normie, I'm like, there's Dick Van Dyke on the stage last week with Public Enemy endorsing Bernie.
That was unbelievable. Wait, were you there for that?
No, I wasn't there for that.
That was an incredible scene.
Yeah, were you there?
No, I watched it, though.
Yeah. It's, but here's the thing. All the polls have shown in the past months that a number of these candidates would defeat Trump head-to-head.
Yeah.
Elizabeth would defeat Trump head-to-head. Mayor Pete,
Maybe.
Biden. Well, the polls have said that. And they show Bernie. Most of the polls show Bernie beat him best.
Yeah, but they also show Biden beating him, and I'm very skeptical of that.
Well, that's only because people they're thinking of the old, previous Biden or a version of Biden that does not exist right now, and that's why they've kept him off TV.
Right.
That's why you don't see him doing interviews.
Candidate protection program.
Well, you and I we're recording this here on this is Saturday. This is probably going to be posted tomorrow on Sunday. But since he's won Super Tuesday, have you seen him on a single show?
I saw him on the Today Show.
He did. He went on the Today Show the next morning.
Yep.
That's it.
I think that's it.
No, but that's it.
I don't even think he's doing any events. I mean, has he even gone to any of these states? Is he doing anything?
There's no big. They can't call them rallies because I was out on the road and then you never saw. You didn't see Biden. You didn't see Biden volunteers. You didn't see Biden anything. There's no there.
Right.
It's a real phantom campaign. And he's done, I think, as well as he's done because he was President Obama's vice president. And that's gone a very long way for him.
And that free media, turns out, is everything.
So I don't know but if that's my point is that if the polls are correct, that just about any Democrat would beat Trump.
Yeah.
There was that poll a couple months ago where it was Trump versus the Roomba. The robot little vacuum on the floor, and the Roomba won. So
missed that. If
that's the case, though, then people on Tuesday and whenever your primary is going to be, should be voting. They should be voting from their real heart. Who do you really want?
Right.
Don't be voting out of fear and anxiety and stress and Trump. And it's hard for me to say just to get rid of that because none of us can get rid of it.
Yeah.
But what do you say to people? Like, look, just. What's the world you want to live in? What's the America you want to live in?
Right.
Who best represents that? That's on the ballot.
Well, and not only that, again, when we've picked the electability candidate, we've lost. The only candidate where we said, you know what, to hell with electability, we're going with the guy that we really like, was Barack Obama, who ended up being, two-term president.
Right.
Every time we've gone with John Kerry's the safe choice, right? Al Gore's the safe choice. Hillary's the safe choice. Joe Biden's the safe choice. There's been nothing safe about those choices except they safely lost, right? I mean, we can talk about Al Gore. But these were not people who ended up being, in fact, the best choice for the Democratic Party. So we should be very leery and wary and skeptical of what James Carville and Joe Scarborough and these other people who claim to be, election experts but have gotten every single thing wrong for the past 10 years are telling us.
Right. Yes. Well, especially Carville. Whoa.
Well,
what is that? What is that?
I don't know. And it's weird because actually the first Clinton campaign, it's not how he governed, but the first Clinton campaign was a populist campaign. It was an economic populist campaign. I mean, Carville's whole thing is about the economy, stupid. Mm-hmm. Well, that's Bernie Sanders. I mean,
and it was a response to 12 years of Reagan and Bush.
That's right. So I don't know. Look, and I don't want to be too disparaging, but for a lot of these people too, this is not just about where people are on the issues or who's going to defeat Donald Trump. It's also about their own livelihoods. It's also about a power structure of which they are a part and which they benefit from. And they know, look, all these donors know. What do they love? First of all, they love access to lawmakers to get their this or that loophole, et cetera. But a lot of these donors, all they want is the stroking of they'll pick up my phone call and they'll listen to my stupid idea and they'll invite me to the Christmas party and I'll get a photo with them I can put on my desk. Bernie Sanders, you aren't going to get any of that. And they know that. They're not going to get any access. They're not going to get any stroking or petting to tell them how special and important and smart they are and how they're really worthy of their position in the meritocracy. They're not going to get any of that. And that's why they hate him. It's not really about Medicare for all or Green New Deal or socialism or any of that. It's that they lose their place in the access power structure, and they can't stand that.
And so many of these politicians who are Democrats this week jumped on board the Biden ship without really, I think, really thinking about it, or at least waiting to see how he'd do in a real debate against a one-on-one candidate.
Well, it was their very last moment to stop Bernie Sanders. If it didn't happen right now, Bernie would be marching to the nomination. I mean, Super Tuesday would have gone. It was the last possible moment. There's a lot of reporting that Obama was making phone calls. I'm sure plenty of promises were made about this or that you'll get in the administration. And there was a lot of pressure, I'm sure, from donors. And this is the endemic corruption of money in politics. When the donors called and said, we're cutting you off and we need you to get in line so we can beat the threat of Bernie Sanders, they all lined up. We're ready to do it.
Yeah, I want to believe that Obama made no phone calls.
Okay.
All right. I mean, you saw?
There was reporting that he did, but we'll just imagine
but it was
that he did.
also in the news this week that his daughter Malia wrote a check for $270 to Bernie Sanders.
All right, I'm down with that.
You know,
maybe we need to get Malia making some phone calls on our behalf.
Yeah. I also believe that their parents, those two girls, their parents listen to their kids. I think they're pretty smart in that way. They know that young people they lose young people with Bernie. If they lose young people if they don't show up and vote, it's in November. It's doom city here.
I wish I had your optimism about that, because I was one of those young voters who, helped elect Barack Obama the first time and really believed in that promise of change. But, most of what you see is him out there like castigating young people for being too woke or whatever online.
He got older.
Yeah.
This is what happens. People get older and they get all grumpy and like that.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah. So it's sad to see, because Obama's younger than me, so I don't like to hear people that he's still just in his 50s, right?
It really is something, though, to see. The generational issue here is real. Like, if you're a person under 30 or even 40, your life has been shaped by the disastrous Iraq War. Your life trajectory has been massively altered still by the financial collapse and the fact that most of the jobs that have been created out of that, sure, unemployment is low, but it's all these low wage jobs. Like, you can't buy a house. You're loaded down with student debt if you could even go to college in the first place, which most young people, let's be clear, cannot. So yeah, you're looking at Donald Trump and you don't like him, but you're also saying we got to do more than just get rid of him. And this is our platform, and this is our guy, and this is what we're organized behind. And you basically had an entire generation come in and say, no, we're all lining up against you. We are against everything you stand for, and we will do whatever it takes to stop all of that in its tracks. It's here's my greatest fear that we cannot afford or allow is it is not an option to disengage from electoral politics. Not an option.
Not now. No.
And my terror is that for a lot of young people who really have these young climate organizers, the Sunrise Movement, these young kids are out there. It's so demoralizing to see the older generations all come together to stop all of that in its tracks.
Right. So we only have a few minutes left. You have an open mic here. You're talking to the people of Michigan, in the state of Washington, North Dakota, Idaho. What do you say to them? We're less than maybe a little over 48 hours, I don't know, away from the polls opening on Tuesday. What do you say? What's your last pitch to people in these states, especially my state in Michigan?
Yeah. Bernie Sanders beats Trump. He is the candidate to defeat Trump because the young people are behind him. He's right on the issues. He's right in particular on trade. And Joe Biden has been a disaster for the country on trade. That's the pitch.
And what's your pitch to the African Americans in these states?
Well, look, everyone's worried about, these are we're all human beings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is an issue also of economic interests. It's an issue of Bernie Sanders has also been standing with the civil rights movement when Joe Biden, frankly, was not. He is the person who has the longest track record of standing with the African American community in every way, from civil rights to fighting for everyone's economic interest and right to health care and right to a clean and livable planet. Economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, these issues are all connected and all of a piece.
Bernie was the only candidate standing on that stage that had actually been arrested at civil rights demonstrations in the 60s.
He walked the walk.
Speaking of walking, he's the only candidate that actually marched with Martin Luther King. He was there on that day in 1963 on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
That's right.
For King's March on Washington. This is who he's been his whole life.
Right.
I don't want people to hear the despair in me, because the other side of me is full of fight and full of the belief that this campaign, this election season, has changed every week.
Right.
We're only 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it was Mayor Pete.
Right.
Was the one who was going to bring down Trump.
Oh, that was always ridiculous, but
okay, but no, but
yeah, but I know that's what everyone thought.
He got the most delegates in Iowa, even though he didn't win the popular vote.
Sure.
He tied Bernie in delegates in New Hampshire.
Right.
So people, the people who were trying to stop Bernie were all like, Mayor Pete, Mayor Pete. And then when that wasn't going to happen, and Nevada kind of blew that away.
Yeah.
Then it was, okay, well, Bloomberg's in this. Let's all get behind Bloomberg.
That's right.
Because Bloomberg can beat Trump. He's got the money, he can beat Trump.
Right.
Super Tuesday blew that away. And
Elizabeth Warren's debate.
Yeah, she really took care of him.
Ended him. Yeah.
I'd like that just on a continuous loop. Should be a ringtone or something. The way she brought him down, and then Biden wins South Carolina, and then Biden's the one.
Right.
And it's like it switches each week, and it can switch again this week.
Absolutely.
The people going to the polls this week and say, wait a minute. Other than New Hampshire, nobody in the North has voted. Nobody has listened to the people who live in the large urban areas of Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia and Newark and not so fast. And at least maybe just wait until the debate. Right.
Well, I saw some polls out of Missouri is another state that's coming up that we haven't been talking about, which I was worried. I thought, this poll coming out of Missouri is going to be a blowout. It was close. 4-point game in Missouri. After Bloomberg and Warren are out, head-to-head, 4-point game. And that's a state with, a lot of white working class, a lot of rural folks, and also urban population. So it's a good representation. That gave me some hope. And I think you're absolutely right. If something can switch so quickly, it can switch back very quickly. When people remember why Joe Biden was so weak that they weren't behind him in the first place. I mean, let's remember, this is sitting vice president. This should have been a cakewalk for him, the whole thing. There's a reason why people were so nervous, and they're going to be reminded of that in the coming days.
That's right.
But even zooming out from the election and where we are in this fight, think of how far we have come in terms of, look, I didn't think I was allowed to be for single payer Medicare for all healthcare just like 10 years ago. I didn't even think that was on the menu, right? I was fighting for a public option, thought that would be Now we're actually allowed to fight for that and believe in that. And it's a mainstream position within the country and the Democratic Party.
So all the exit polls showed on Super Tuesday that the majority of Americans support Medicare for all, support a raise in the minimum wage, support. Go down. I mean, Bernie and Elizabeth have succeeded in convincing certainly the majority of Democrats, but also on a lot of these issues, the majority of Americans, that their way is the best way.
Yeah.
So this is a victory already, but we have to have our person in the White House. 4 more years of Trump isn't going to get us any of this.
Right.
We have to flip the Senate.
Right.
There's so much to do. I don't know.
One piece at a time. Let's win Michigan first.
There you go.
And then
we'll
do the next piece.
We'll do our best here. I'm counting on all of you, friends, family. I know who you are. Come on, let's do this. And he's in Flint tonight for a town hall. He told me, he said that when he's inaugurated, one of the first things he's going to do is send the Army Corps of Engineers to Flint, dig up all the pipes, not just the main ones that come from that plant, but all the pipes have to be dug up and replaced. And people are still being poisoned in Flint. I'm so happy that he's going there this weekend and talking to people.
It's unconscionable that hasn't been done yet.
Isn't that something?
Unconscionable.
Unconscionable. And he will do that. He will do that first week. He will send in the resources of the U.S. government to stop this this poisoning, what I've called an ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Once the governor knew, the Republican governor, and did nothing about it, and then tried to cover it up, he and his people, that's it. Anyways, sorry to get off on that. Thank you for coming by. You're going to a book signing.
I am.
Right now. So
yes.
Tell people just quickly about your book.
Populist Guide to 2020.
The Populist Guide to 2020.
Yes.
I like guides. They help me.
It's nice and it's short and sweet. It's kind of it's an anthology of what we talk about on our show, Rising. It's written by myself, my co-host, Sagar and Jetty. And look, no one accounted for this like populist undercurrent that is moving politics on both the left and the right. If you don't understand that, you don't understand what's going on in the country right now. Yeah. So most of the media hasn't done the work to try to understand that. So we lay it out in terms of, the media bias and how that influences things, theories of change, what could actually work to move us forward as a country, drawing on some of Bernie's time as mayor of Burlington and what he was able to achieve there. So I think people will like it if they check it out. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you shop.
Populist Guide to 2020.
You got it.
And everybody, please, every morning, Krystal and Sagar are doing this show on the Hill TV. Was it the Hill TV?
Yeah, the best place to find it is YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, look for The Hill, Rising,
Rising's the name of the show.
Smash subscribe.
Yeah. Okay. Rising's the show. You can get a wonderful take on the news and what's going on every morning, Monday through Friday, by watching this.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that every day. Thank you for coming in, and thanks to all of you who've been listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Rumble. It's free. And send me your comments. Leave a voicemail. I love hearing from you. This is a critical week, my friends. This is a critical week. Boy, it felt like I said that last week, but this is even. Deep breath. Get to work, everybody. Thank you.